Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we have a very special honor to be hosting some very distinguished members of our faculty with us. The University of Pennsylvania Government and Politics Association has the honor of hosting 4 professors who played a big role in the recent events that transpired in response to the Wharton India Economic Forum's invitation of Mr. Narendra Modi, the current Chief Minister of the State of Gujarat in India. With us tonight we have Anil Loomba, Catherine Bryson, Professor of English, Saswati Sarkar, Professor of Electrical and Systems Engineering, Narendra Ghose, Assistant Professor at the School of Social Policy and Practice, and Dr. Asim R. Shukla, Associate Professor of Urological Surgery at the Perelman School of Medicine and Director of Minimally Invasive Surgery at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Obviously, they are a very distinguished group, but from what we've been able to gather, these 4 have very different opinions. Now we're going to start a conversation that we hope that you will continue on your own after this event with your own friends and family. So without further ado, I'll have our distinguished panel introduce themselves and give some brief introductory remarks about their involvement in the issues related to Gujarat and Mr. Narendra Modi. So first I would like to ask Dr. Shukla to give his introductory remarks.
I might project better if I stand with that.
Okay, no, that's fine.
So thank you, Varun, for and the Penn GPA. I got to meet some of the co-founders who are putting together this forum. I think this is a very important forum, but as much as I'm pleased by this opportunity to discuss this, I can't but hide my disappointment that this is more like a post-mortem. A post-mortem because we're meeting in the wake of a sad, shameful episode here at Penn. Because what transpired should never transpire here on this campus again. The Wharton students were empowered to organize a forum, just as the Penn GPA today was empowered to organize this forum. Students have the opportunity to invite whoever they would like, and an opportunity to provide a forum so that a variety, a plurality of opinions can be discussed. But an unbelievable, in my opinion, turn of events occurred at Wharton, where the students were told, very involuntarily, by the administration at Wharton, that they must disinvite a person that they had taken the time to invite. His photo had already appeared on the website, social media, the press, promotional material, and the speaker was duly prepared to speak, Mr. Narendra Modi. It's now well known, the international opprobrium that visited this campus. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, so much from India's pluralistic society weighed in to condemn these turn of events. A facade of the free speech was seen to be a facade here. An open discussion at Penn had been silenced. Every major sponsor of that event pulled out. Thousands of dollars were lost. Some have said and will say that this forum was their goal, and we can have this type of discussion. That the discussion has started. And I don't doubt those voices, the sincerity of those voices. But could we not have had this discussion after Mr. Modi had spoken his piece? Could we not have still continued this conversation? Did this forum really have to happen in the wake of the pieces of the Wharton Forum? Did killing free speech at Wharton somehow empower this forum? As the days passed, I tried to reconcile this cancellation. I've reached out to all the administration officials that I could reach out to, from President Gutman's office to Dean Robertson at Wharton, everywhere that I could go. The little pieces of information that I could glean were then just that the Wharton administration said, pull your invitation. And the students who organized and invited the speakers did not want to do that, but they were forced. Something that should never happen for open discourse. And that's why I think I'm here, and perhaps Dr. Sarkar is here. Because it is sad but true that despite all the homilies that we give to the prominence, the rise, the arrival of the global stage of India as an economic power, as a global power, people still don't understand the subtleties of politics and social-political realities in India. Just as Hindu students, perhaps even here at Penn, are too often treated to the superficial didactics of caste, cow, karma, that same superficiality also continues into the world of social political issues in India. Jammu and Kashmir is treated very reductively. Hindutva, BJP, secularism, pseudo-secularism, Indian communism, Naxalism, all of these are words that are not handled with nuance and subtlety. And it's my opinion that this lack of nuance pervaded the administration at Wharton. For as much as they were engaged with India, they did not understand some of these social political realities and what these really mean to the people in India. What I would argue is that an emic understanding, an insider understanding of what's going on in India, where all the politics meet, was lacking. They had more of an etic, an outsider perspective. Well, we'll try to give our perspectives to this, and we'll continue to resume the debate where it was abruptly ended at Wharton. Now, we know Wharton is globally known as a business school. Students there invited somebody at a forum that was called Changing Seas Steering Growth. Growth. It was about growth in India. That was the name of this forum. And they invited the political leader, who, whether we like it or not, his name is considered synonymous with growth as a political leader in India. Under his watch, the per capita GDP in the state of Gujarat is 3.2 times the Indian average. Income per person in the state has more than doubled over the decade in his tenure. As The Economist magazine recently wrote, if all Indians enjoy the same income as Gujaratis, the country's economy would be 50% bigger, easily outstripping France's. Businesses flock to Gujarat, as do migrant workers. Farmers have flourished. Modi believes in vouchers to improve education and in privatizing state-run firms. He wants India to become a hub for defense manufacturing, but also a big consumer of solar power. He favors looser labor laws and conditions for generating productive private jobs, rather than government make-work schemes. He thinks India's priority is rapid growth to cut poverty. Indian business craves such a figure. Many jobless voters yearn for him too. Now, whether we like what he stands for, can you argue that Wharton, a business school, would want to hear from a guy like this? Is there really any debate as to whether there was propriety in inviting him to speak? Now, Modi cannot be discussed without a discussion of 2002. The train burning in Godhra and the subsequent horrendous riots that took place all over Gujarat. The visa denial will be discussed in 2005 and some of the lunacy that surrounded this denial during the Bush administration. We will discuss how inclusive Mr. Modi's model for Gujarat is and is not. These are debates we need to have, should have, and could have had even if Modi had spoken. But in the end, it comes down to free speech. The question is why? Why did my colleagues seek to suppress debate rather than engage? Why did they seek to impose their ideology, their politics, rather than foster a plurality of discourse that they themselves have advocated before? If they detested the speaker, why not ask Wharton students to perform a forum for opposing views? If they detested his ideology, why not empower speakers of opposing ideology? I'd like to read a quote. Quote, as teachers, our role is to model respectful and rigorous intellectual exchange, especially on highly politicized issues that evoke impassioned responses. Skipping his paragraph. As scholars, we demonstrate how to carefully assess historical analogies rather than deploy them for rhetorical advantage. These articulate words were written not by myself, but by Professor Loomba. And those are the ones that I now quote to reinforce my own plaintive cry for free speech that was denied. Professor Loomba also said in the New York Times interview that granting Mr. Modi a position of honor increases his personal legitimacy and furthers a political agenda. Well, I hope this debate will clear up which political agenda is okay, acceptable, benign enough for Penn. Which political agenda is too hot for poor Penn students to handle, that they may be swept up in the ideological surge. As I've written before, Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, FIRE, ranked Penn among the top American institutions for free speech on campus. Professor Alan Charles Core, an endowed professor of history here, founded this institution. These were his words at the rally that was held to protest the denial of his speech, of Modi's term at the lectern. Penn has had leaders of China and the Soviet Union speak here. Despite the concentration camps, the captive nations, and in the case of China, the forced abortions, the deaths of dissidents, and the crushing of Tibet. At such time, the cry is that a university should be a forum open to significant voices. That is correct. The real questions are speech or imposed silence, debate or selective censorship, the right of Penn students to hear from whom they choose, or the coercive authority of others to deny them that right. If a professor invites a student on a date, everyone cries, "Power imbalance." What is it when professors demand that students rescind an invitation? Penn is planning closer collaboration with China, home of the Laogai work camps and debts by government beyond counting. Narendra Modi, on the other hand, may not even be heard on matters economic. What hypocrisy. When a professors demand censorship, they betray higher education. They betray their students. They betray their moral, professional, and ethical obligations. And they betray this university. For shame on the censors. For shame on hypocrisy. For shame on the administration for not speaking out immediately and forcefully on this. Those are Professor Ghose's words. Thank you.
Next, I'll ask Professor Loomba to present.
In 2002, Gujarat witnessed two horrific acts of violence. A passenger train filled with Hindu pilgrims was burned by a Muslim mob, killing at least 58 people. In the days that followed, the retaliatory attack that Mr. Modi claimed was a spontaneous reaction of Hindus resulted in the deaths of thousands of Muslims and an unknown number of rapes of Muslim women. Since then, various human rights groups, journalists, and public servants have accused Mr. Modi of being complicit in the riots, an accusation he denies. To quote the extensive report conducted by Human Rights Watch, at best, government officials like the police were passive observers, and at worst, they acted in concert with murderous mobs. A year later, the United States revoked his visa on the grounds that he was responsible for, quote, severe violations of religious freedom. Over 100,000 Muslims have been displaced from their homes and are unable to return. Today, as Mr. Modi projects himself as a viable prime ministerial candidate, there are furious attempts to project him as a miracle maker, singularly responsible for the astonishing success story in Gujarat. Mention of the Gujarat killings rattles Modi supporters. They like to turn to the record of the Congress, which itself has a murky past on bringing the victims of the 1984 anti-Sikh riots to justice. They claim that Modi has not been indicted by the Supreme Court of India. This is again a distortion. The court, in a 2004 judgment on the riots, censured him as, quote, a modern Nero who watched while Gujarat burned, unquote. These are not the words of exoneration. It also said, and I quote, it is no doubt true that the accused persons have been acquitted by the trial court and the acquittal has been upheld. But if the acquittal is unmerited and based on tainted evidence, tailored investigation, unprincipled prosecutor and perfunctory trial and evidence of threatened or terrorized witnesses, it is no acquittal in the eyes of law, unquote. Modi has repeatedly justified the 2002 violence, covered it up, and shielded its perpetrators. Modi supporters claim that it's time to forget 2002 and move on, even as they aggressively champion the idea of India as a Hindu nation. As the stakes for them rise, they try and muffle all dissenting voices and intimidate anyone who dares to question the massive effort to whitewash Modi's record, whether that be about the 2002 events, or about the development story, or about his Hindu supremacist agenda. This is also what happened at Penn. Those of us who dared to question whether he was a fit candidate to be invited here, to be given a forum here, have been accused of repressing free speech. At a rally outside the English department, Penn was asked to fire us because we wrote a letter of dissent to water. As noted, columnist Praful Bidwai wrote yesterday, in an article carried by 27 Indian newspapers, and I quote, "The issue was not Modi's right to free expression, but hate speech and sanctification of the Gujarat butchery and his own pivotal role in it, documented by over 40 independent agencies. The protest," he says, "was wholly in keeping with the ethos and culture of US universities, which also protested against the Vietnam War." Let us be clear. We are not opposing Modi's right to free speech. He has those rights, and he avails of them on a daily basis. He has full and immediate access to the news media in Gujarat and India. What we are opposed to is the forum, which is an element in a larger institution of which we are a part, granting him a platform, a position of honor to increase his personal legitimacy and thus further a political agenda which we find reprehensible. So when Modi supporters wanted to beam him in, and they did, they can do it, but not in my house. It is curious that the protesters, and you have this leaflet going around which asks for us to be fired, they did not direct their ire at Wharton, but those faculty and students who have no institutional power to disinvite Modi. They disregarded the fact that 300 people signed the petition. They picked on 3 people and targeted them as people who had shut up Modi instead of exercise their own voice. Indeed, the targets of these protests, including myself, remain in the dark as to why the disinvitation was issued, as no specific explanation has been forthcoming from the conference organizers or Dean Robertson. I'm happy to talk about the murky stuff that is emerging there, but I won't take your time on this now. Second, the letter of dissent against Modi has been misrepresented as the work of 3 professors in the English department. I pity my colleague, Professor Ghose, as solely responsible for what happened subsequently. There's a reason behind this. Make no mistake. Don't question institutions like Wharton or their internal procedures, but use this as a way of scaring anyone who dissents while painting them to be a small, fringe, lunatic minority. These so-called champions of free speech have asked Penn to fire those whom they disagree with while upholding the right of speech of someone who enjoys chief ministerial powers in his state, who has every media outlet available to him. Moreover, there have been constitutional experts who have written about freedom of speech in this case. Vivek Deheja and Supreme Court advocate Karuna Nandi have pointed out, quote, "The right to free speech implies no corresponding obligation for someone else to give you a platform to exercise that freedom. The First Amendment of the US Constitution and Article 19 of the Indian Constitution prohibit government censorship of expression." And they carry on, "Neither constitution prohibits a student body or indeed a university from deciding who it wants to invite or uninvite. Indeed, uninviting and rudeness in general, though a violation of the rules of etiquette, is also a constitutional exercise of free speech, not its abrogation." Those who wanted us fired, and please look at the pamphlets I have passed out, use Islamophobic language, suggesting that anyone who dissents from Modi is aligned with Al-Qaeda. They caricature us as intellectual jihadis. Note the language. They also appropriated the language of anti-fascism. We are now like the propagandist Goebbels, who use state machinery like Modi does to silence dissent. In a gross distortion of the history of fascism, they carried placards announcing first they came for the Hindus, parodying and trivializing not just the Holocaust, but distorting the actions of Modi's own state as it permitted and even aided the mass murder of Muslims. Narayan Kataria, one of the organizers of the protest, openly wants, and the quotes are there, I have web backup for all of this, all the documents are with me. He wants the Indian constitution changed so that India is declared a Hindu nation. He asks for all Hindus to keep guns, it's all there, and offers strategies to dismantle India's secular polity. I will note that Sashwati Sarkar had no qualms about joining the protest and sharing a platform with Hindu supremacists. Make no mistake, these are Hindu supremacists and the equivalent of white supremacists in America. Like the white supremacists, they speak the language of being overrun by those who are alien to the nation. The more crass of them speak the language of intolerance and bigotry. The more sophisticated disguise it by saying Muslims and Christians should accept their minority status in India. Those of you who are aware of racism here, and indeed may even feel it at the receiving end, need to be sensitive to how this works in India, where Hindu supremacists speak a language just like white supremacists do here. Would you ask a white supremacist whose name has been internationally linked to mass murder to come to Penn and then justify it in the name of freedom to speech? Would you say that since he's now heading a development miracle, let's overlook what happened in the past? Would you always say, there are always two sides to this question? The stakes are very high. There are people present here in this room whose families have been massacred in Gujarat and who cannot return. Their voices cannot be silenced by anecdotal claims, as some of our colleagues do on the web, and claim that some Muslims feel quite fine in Gujarat. Thank you. We have had letters from Muslims who feel intimidated by this forum, let alone walking freely in Gujarat. When a few weeks ago we screened The Final Solution, a film that documents for 3.5 relentless hours the pogrom and has irrefutable footage showing exactly what happened, we had the daughter and grandson of Hassan Jafri, who was tortured and killed with many others, present in the room. It is shocking to us that some members of that audience could turn to her and say, "Ma'am, we are so sorry for your loss, but after all, Modi has not been indicted by the Supreme Court and has shown such a huge economic miracle in Gujarat." As if the lives of minorities are a worthwhile trade for a few points of GDP growth. It gets worse. The Modi machine is now increasingly claiming that not in fact that nothing happened. I mean, we're getting there though. It always claimed that Modi was not responsible and that it was spontaneous public reaction. This is an unfortunately familiar formulation uttered by political leaders hoping to exonerate themselves for the violence that they failed to prevent or even aided. What we are witnessing, therefore, is hypocrisy that follows the cult of personality. On the one hand, Modi is such a unique and powerful man that only he and he alone is responsible for a development miracle. On the other hand, despite this power and efficacy, he has nothing to do with what happened in 2002 right under his nose. He is all-powerful in effecting good and powerless in preventing bad. He is exceptional in every way. As his star rises, even those within his own party who have been skeptical of his dictatorial tendencies are being silenced. Sounds familiar? Many in the audience here who may have been too young when the Gujarat program took place in 2002, I agree. But no one here is too young to read about how other fascists have historically come to power without being indicted by any court on the wave of popular upsurges and through the ballot, silencing all dissent while claiming to be the persecuted ones, claiming to be efficient and bringing in prosperity. And they were supported also because they appealed to national and religious pride. This cannot be trivialized by a debate. Those of us who protest Modi may be a minority in this room. We get hate mail, which I'm happy to share with you, threatening us with all kinds of retribution, including rape, when Modi comes to power. And there may be others who are too scared to come here. But we do believe that it's not going to be possible to silence all dissent against this man and his machinery. Thank you.
planned to give a different speech, but I'm going to change it. And I'm going to speak it, given the campaign of calumny that has been unfortunately launched against me personally by Professor Anya. So I'm going to try and rebut her points, and I hope in the questions that Varun is going to ask us, I will address, I will be able to pack in the speech that I had already planned.
Can you speak a bit loudly?
Yes. If I'm going, how about this? Can you hear me? At the end? You cannot hear? All right. How about this?
That's good.
That's good? All right. Okay, so if I ever drop really below the volume that reaches you, raise your hand. All right? And Varun, if I'm not looking, please allow me. So Professor Loomba mentions that I had no issues sharing platforms with quote-unquote Hindu supremacists. So I'd like to acknowledge I have really no idea what kind of activities, details of the activities performed by this quote-unquote Hindu supremacists, simply because I do not care. I was there to present my point of view, why it was wrong, and if the platform is arranged by anyone, I would participate. Now, in the pamphlet that has reached you, many of these features, many of the points have been mentioned. However, Professor Loomba doesn't really mention if I have spoken any of these. My picture is there. It's very, very interesting. My picture is there, and then I have the point, then we have the points mentioned by others. So I don't think she is. I think she's taking liberties with the truth. She's not lying. But she is misrepresenting me. And that is exactly the agenda that has been pursued by the so-called activists. So I'm going to try and rebut their points, and as I said, I'm totally deviating from the speech that I had planned, simply because I was hoping, the speech that I had planned, I had in mind that we would have a more constructive engagement, which has now been ruled out in view of the personal attack that has been launched. So, this is what I will do. We have a YouTube video of the speech that I gave. So I would like to share that. I don't really have that with me, but I'm going to share that with Varun. Okay? And if there is a mailing list of those who have been attending this, and for example there is a Facebook page, I'm going to request that the YouTube video be posted there. However, I believe many of you have read the articles that I have wrote. And I would like to find out one statement that reflected my so-called belief in Hindu supremacy, in racism, and I would like to challenge Professor Loomba and...
Please get my name right.
Yes?
Pronounce my name correctly.
Well, please excuse me, this is not really about pronunciation.
Oh.
Yes, it is. Okay, it is about making more serious points here. Okay? Pardon me.
Fine.
So, go ahead. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, Professor Loomba and Professor Ghose, I would personally challenge them to produce one sentence which can be objected on the grounds of racism or supremacy. Alright? With that open challenge, I would now try and rebut the points she made. Some of them, okay, if not all, because it was a rather long speech, okay, and at the end of it, if I have some time, I would like to pack in one piece. Alright, this inaccuracies in the statements. She did mention thousands. Please note the word S, thousands of Muslims. Now the official reports given in Indian Parliament by a minister who is in a party which is politically opposed to Mr. Modi places the number of Muslims who have been killed just above 1,000. 1,000, between 1,000 and 1,100. So there is no question of thousands here. That is an example of the factual inaccuracy. The faculty members are presenting, and I am a faculty member, and I indulge in research, and the training that I have received enforces me to be true to facts. So I'm honestly shocked at this distortion. All right, so she does mention about the human rights report. However, she does not mention about an SIT report which has exonerated Mr. Modi. So let me take a few moments to talk about this SIT report. So SIT is really a task force which has been instituted by the Supreme Court of India to investigate the role of Mr. Modi and other officials in his government in the riots. And SIT has led to indictment of quite a few politicians in this. And the functioning of SIT has been monitored by a panel of judges in Supreme Court of India, and quite a few of them have made several statements that are opposed, several statements that lead us to believe they are not very friendly to Mr. Modi. In fact, one of them, Justice Aftab Alam, his daughter is actually in close, has close collaborations with one of the so-called activists who has been involved, so-called activist who was involved in launching a campaign of calumny against Mr. Modi. So in other words, the judges who are mentioning there are no reason to be friendly to Mr. Modi, and they have supervised the functioning of this task force investigation, which has spanned several years. At the end of this investigation, a detailed report of 500 pages have been generated, which exonerates Mr. Modi. Now, I am not going to be economical with truth, like my distinguished colleague here. So I would mention that this report hasn't yet received. This report is currently being reviewed by the courts, and the activists who are opposing Mr. Modi is challenging it. So this report, so we will know at the end, we will know maybe in a year or so, I cannot really predict the time, that whether this report will stand legal scrutiny. I would like to mention this upfront. However, what this report, I mean, it's available in the web, and it details all the activities Mr. Modi undertook. So let me take a few moments to elaborate on those activities first. Let's review. Mr. Modi was just 4 months into power when this incident happened, this unfortunate Godhra incident. So he was yet to take full control of his administration. So the unfortunate Godhra train burning happened on 27 February. He immediately rushed to Godhra, and he issued shoot at sight orders. And several potential offenders were rounded up that very night. However, this event did generate significant passion. So around 28, disturbances started happening, and lives were lost, damages were inflicted. So 28th afternoon, Mr. Modi called in army, the Indian army, and the Indian army does not operate under his control. So 28th night, they started, the different units of the Indian army started appearing. Mr. Modi also called in police forces, reinforcements of police forces from neighboring states, which are ruled by his political opponents. He was denied. 2 of these states refused to send in reinforcement, 1 of them did. So as a result, the police force in Gujarat was significantly outnumbered. So that was 28. Right. So 1st March, the army arrived and conducted flag marches. And so there were several parts of Gujarat which were under the control of the army, and they could not immediately quell the riots. So if the army, Indian army, which is a highly trained professional force, cannot quell the riots, is it right to blame the police force in Gujarat and Mr. Modi in person for this? Doesn't appear right to me. Now, by the end of the 2nd of March, that is within 3 days of the riots, the violence started subsiding, and let us review the history of riots in Gujarat. There have been instances years back where the riots and the corresponding curfews continued for 6 months to a year. And in this case, the riots were controlled within 3 days. And also, this is not a program, as some of our colleagues would like us to believe. About 30%, so about 1,000, I mean, maybe the worst estimates are 1,100, 1,200 people died. 30% of that are Hindus. So my colleague here mentions 100,000 Muslims who had to take shelter in relief camps. True. She doesn't mention 40,000 Hindus who had to be housed in relief camps. So that's the level of truth she's sticking to. I would like to present the facts in entirety. So it is, again, I am asserting that it was not a program. 2% of Gujarat was involved in riots. So if it were really a program, it would have spanned to a much larger portion. Yes, 1,000 people died, and even one death is lamentable, and 1,000 deaths is definitely lamentable. It's definitely one of the blots on the history of India. But is it the only blot? So Gujarat has a history of riots. So does rest of India. So 3,000. So if we look at 3 or 4 riots, including Gujarat, we would find many of them were programs. For example, the Sikh riot in 1984, where 3,000 Sikhs were killed and not a single Hindu. And if we look at the history of conviction, the rioters in Gujarat have been convicted. One of the ministers in Mr. Modi's cabinet have received very stringent punishment. And I just read the report. The government of Gujarat is going to court to ask for death penalty for her. She was a minister in Mr. Modi's cabinet. So does it reflect a political bias? Perhaps not. And we should also review the history of convictions in the other riots. Almost zilch. 1984 riots. How many were convicted? 2 or 3. And several hundreds have been convicted in the 2002 riots, and many of them in the Gujarat courts, conducted by, the investigations were monitored by Gujarat policemen. All right? So let's look at the other issues which my distinguished colleague, and I apologize to her for not being able to. Okay, so let me just address some of the other issues, some of the important ones, because I have been running out of time, right? So regarding the issues of free speech. So we hear that Mr. Modi shouldn't be allowed to talk in our house, in their house. This is also my house. I would have liked Mr. Modi to talk in this platform. Why was I denied the opportunity to hear him out? Where did the university really needed to extend a disinvite? Why wasn't that debated amongst all stakeholders involved? We don't know. Then we get the point that it would have bestowed personal legitimacy on Mr. Modi. He is a thrice democratically elected chief minister in an important state in India with 6 million population. I am very proud to be part of this university, but I still do not think an invitation in this university grants any additional legitimacy which his electorate cannot. I deny that because I strongly believe in the principle of democracy, and I know I'm standing on the soil of the United States, which is one of the most vibrant democracies in the world. And I am speaking about the chief minister who is democratically elected in the world's largest democracy. So we have absolutely no right to deny or bestow any legitimacy on him. We have, in fact, undermined our own legitimacy in the process, not his. And that's what I'm sad about. so I'm running short of time, and I would have loved to really talk about some of the development agendas of Mr. Modi, so I'll take just a few minutes, if you would indulge me.
I'd rather have you.
One minute. So, just 1 minute. I'll just...
You are running a little bit over.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sarkar, I understand that we need to engage in a debate. Even that I actually don't understand. I'll come to that in a second. But when you're standing in front of a crowd with my likeness, and which says, "Tu Jogebles," when you're standing in front of posters that say, "Fire Anya Loomba," and "Fire Subir Kaul," and these are Al-Qaeda's of free speech, you're one of our preeminent professors of logic, you're a scientist. Obviously, you're sharing a platform that is not necessarily very, nice for us. So, the argument that, you didn't know who you were speaking with or who you were sharing a platform with is problematic at best, incompetent at worst, and is really, really problematic for those of us who are threatened because of our status in this university and in this society by some very, very hate speech-filled stances. So, if this was a true mistake, let me, next time identify for you who are the Hindu supremacists and who aren't, because they're very, very clear in this particular instance. I will also say, not to make it personal really, but it is personal. Everything about this is personal. Even this debate is personal. Even the concept that we can debate about something like this is personal. Let me tell you why. This is a letter I got, emailed to me by an extremely irate person. And I'm going to read this out with his permission. I'm very troubled by the event page I saw on Facebook about the upcoming debate about Modi. The entire event is appalling for a number of reasons. Anti-Muslim and anti-Christian violence are not matters that are up for debate. These are serious acts of violence that must be condemned. It's insulting that Penn would even entertain pro-Modi perspectives and treat their defense of him as equally valid as those who, like yourself, protest against him. Have the organizers taken a moment to consider how hostile this space would be, especially for South Asian Muslims? Have they taken note of the strong Islamophobic language that is used in the pro-Modi demonstrations? Slogans like "Stop the academic jihad" and free speech from intellectual Al-Qaeda. Is it a wonder that there are hardly any Muslims in attendance, let alone speaking at this event? Have the organizers thought about having Gujarati Muslims share their stories about the 2002 massacre? Or is this event simply about non-Muslim South Asians sitting around and debating about Modi, while Gujarati Muslims are excluded from their own struggles? It's absurd how the event is described as being a night of fun, complete with Indian food, although that did transpire, without taking into consideration that many people will not attend the event because the presence of pro-Modi supporters the very presence creates an unsafe space. Let's talk about what is actually comfortable and what is not. A friend had invited me to the invite, but can you imagine being Muslim and going to this event where I'd have to hear people not only defending Modi, but also hear those perspectives being legitimized? What's next? The organizers are going to host an all-American buffet and night of fun where people debate whether or not the KKK are responsible for anti-black violence? I applaud you for countering and debating those who have been making vicious attacks against you and Anya Loomba. However, I think it's also important to have a strong critique of how debates such as this do a very good job of legitimizing people like Modi, who, as you know, is complicit in so much violence. Defending hate speech and perpetrators of violence, especially when that violence targets specific minority communities, is quite disturbing. And I think the organizers at Penn need to take their framing of this event into serious account. Thanks for reading. I hope more people listen to you, but I think it's also important for you to know that Muslims like myself will not be attending because we don't like being in situations where people are defending Modi. If we are going to be excluded from the conversation, then what does that say about the event itself? And I agree with every word that's written there. We're here in shame that this is even framed as a debate. We're here because some of us, at least I do believe that there is an absolute obfuscation that has happened since 2002 that has absolutely denigrated our conscience. And the facts need to be retold, not told, because they have been told over and over and over and over and over again. So let's retell them, because our conscience is at stake. Our very identity as Indians is at stake. Our identity as human beings is at stake. So yes, Dr. Sarkar, this is very, very personal. Let me start with the free speech issue and let me throw it away because it's a ridiculous red herring. I was arrested last year. I don't know if any of you were arrested, but I was certainly arrested last year for standing up for free speech. We were arrested in Occupy because we protested the ability of the state to clear the streets when we were resisting policies. That, ladies and gentlemen, is free speech. And we took it to court against the police and the United States governments, the mayoral governments, and we won. If tomorrow the state comes down on Modi, any state, and his right to say whatever hate he has to say, if tomorrow he is incarcerated because he says his development is good, then I might consider, depending on how hateful his speech is, I might consider going out to protect his right to free speech. We did not infringe on that right. We, in fact, established the right to free speech by resisting his platform. And if anyone were to squelch that right to resist, they really need to go back and understand what free speech is. They really need to take my class. The right to free speech, it has been absolutely co-opted into a horrendous process here that must be critiqued because it is that co-optation itself that is problematic. It is that co-optation that squelches free speech in the first place. This debate is happening because of the way we resisted. The conversation that is happening in these annals is happening because we finally resisted. We did not take away Modi's right to come to the Wharton Forum. The Wharton Forum folks did. And I have gone on record saying that I believe that this was exactly the institutionalization of free speech. They invited Modi, perhaps they were incompetent, perhaps they didn't know, perhaps they were Hindu supremacists. Who knows? Who cares? The final stance of invitation is what matters. And we went and said, yo, hold up, hold a minute. This sucks. And we wrote something in better language and said, this sucks. Reconsider your stance. And lo and behold, they did. Were we that powerful? Well, our power probably comes from the fact that there was a lot of screwed up stuff going on there that resulted in his invitation in the first place. Part of that might have been, glimpsed at by the fact that as soon as he left, Adani's sponsorship went away. Perhaps that free speech was not so free after all. Perhaps it came with a price. It certainly did for Wharton. Perhaps if you reverse engineer it, sorry for taking a term from your field, but if you reverse engineer it, perhaps you'll see that free speech was made and was paid for. And that is perhaps why Modi was invited in the first place. Who knows? Who cares? It was Wharton who rescinded their stance, and I think they did a good job, and I praise them. I believe that Wharton made the right choice. Thank goodness. Let's put that to rest. How much time do I have?
As soon as you can, right.
Okay. This claim that Modi is not responsible because he has not been indicted by the SIT. Let's look at the SIT. Okay, let's really look at it because we have here.
Yeah.
4 different people in the SIT have stated, 4, that a meeting took place on February 27th in Modi's residence where Modi told law enforcement personnel that police cannot take balanced actions against Hindus and Muslims, that Hindus will be allowed to vent their anger for 3 days. 4 people said that in the SIT. Number one, Sanjeev Bhatt, the DCI police of security. The SIT dismisses. Okay, they state this and then they come to an interesting conclusion. They dismissed this because this statement was made late in the day. The Supreme Court appoints a special counsel to look into that conclusion. That counsel, Senior Advocate Ramchandran of the Supreme Court, actually disagrees with the SIT conclusion. And this is perhaps what Dr. Sarkar was saying about whether the SIT will actually hold up legally in the future. I think you're right. It probably will not. Number two, Haren Pandya, the then Revenue Minister, says he was present at that meeting and heard Modi. Absolute indictment of the fact that Modi gave this order. Haren Pandya, assassinated under mysterious circumstances a few weeks later. Haren Pandya's father goes to the Supreme Court and moves the court and asks the court to prosecute Modi for this assassination. R.B. Srikumar, ADG of Police, number 3, says that he was told by Chakravarti, another senior police official in Gujarat, that Chakravarti was present at that meeting. Number 4, Harish Bhatt, MLA, in a sting operation conducted by Tehelka, whose states were confirmed by the CBI, the Indian form of the FBI, that these states were true, said that Modi in fact told senior government officials to hold back for 3 days, the Hindus can go amok. 4 people. A number of councils have said that based on that alone, the SIT's conclusion was incorrect. The conclusion should have been that the Supreme Court needs to move ahead. And guess what it is? There are court cases pending right now, right today. This is not a closed case. I would take the SIT and I would flush that last conclusion down the toilet. Because that conclusion is surprising. But perhaps not surprising if you consider that out of the 5 people who were on the SIT, 3 of them were senior Gujarat police personnel. It's the left hand investigating the left hand. You're not going to get much of an unbiased opinion there. Or perhaps they were just incompetent. Again, who cares? The conclusions do not add up. Yesterday, and I will end with this. Yesterday, the SIT turned over 7,000 messages from police all over the city of Ahmedabad during the riots that were being relayed to the Central Police Control, where the head of police officials and state officials were present. Let me read out some of these. February 27th, 5:45 p.m., and these can be brutal, and especially for some of you whose families were present. Police message to the Central Control. Reports of violent attacks by Karsevaks coming across from the state. A VHP mob was reported at swelling at Badagam village in Morasa that was to become another epicenter, that has become another epicenter of violence. February 27, 2012, 11:59 p.m. 50 Karsevaks on special bus from Ahmedabad reached Morasa, Badagam village at 6:30 p.m. 500 strong mob received Karsevaks. Karsevaks told mob about attack on Sabarmati Express. Crowds swelled to thousands by 9:30 p.m. Police presence insufficient to maintain order. Please send reinforcements. 10 shops owned by Muslims and several vehicles set ablaze by mobs. Response? Nothing. February 28, 2002, early morning. Sola hospital staff surrounded by 500 strong mob. Please provide security at hospital urgently. Later on, Police Commissioner Pandey testified to the SIT. I went to Sola Civil Hospital around 10 and found that the doctors were under pressure to complete the documentation, but apart from that, I didn't find anything alarming. February 28th, 5 o'clock, send a police inspector CBJ Bhardwaj to the SIB control room, the Central Police Control Room. Mob has attacked the society from all sides. Ehsan Jafri and women and children are being burnt alive in front of us. Houses are ablaze. Mob is looting homes. Please send reinforcements. This is 2 kilometers from the Central Control Room. Response? Nothing. Yet, and this is the most amazing thing, ladies and gentlemen, the SIT did not use any of these 7,000 messages to impeach the testimony of these senior police officials, the state apparatus, that their testimony being they did not know that this was happening. They were taken by surprise, so they waited not a few hours, not a day, not 2 days, 3 days to mobilize. 3 days, where our conscience as a nation was was absolutely stabbed in the back. And the SIT did not use any of these. This came out yesterday. The SIT finally turned over.
Look at the website. It's all over the Indian media.
It's all over the Indian news. This is why the senior state official has been condemned to death, and we'll come to that. This happened today, has been not condemned, but an appeal for a death sentence. That happened after this. Because we are now in a pathway to finally get some people to work, especially Modi. I'll save the rest for the rest.
We do apologize for the lack of Indian food. There are reasons for that. The
I
sack
think
board.
we'd rather not eat for
Okay.
this. Let's just save the hilarity for later.
Moving ahead with the questions, I'm going to ask each of our participants to maybe give a couple of minutes of response, and we'll see where we're going in terms of time, looking at where we are. So the first question we have is, many in India and around the world have remarked about Gujarat's development over the past 10 years since Narendra Modi was first elected Chief Minister. To what level is Mr. Modi responsible for these advancements, and what commentary do you have to offer regarding the current state of Gujarat? We can start with you, Dr.
Thanks, Varun. Wow, I don't even know where to go. This completely changed from what I was expecting, and I kind of feel bad for the students. I mean, here you are being harangued again, and just facts shoved down your throats. What I think I would say is, anybody else, the Supreme Court of India is working on this. If Modi is found guilty of any of this, I think every one of us will be the first to say he goes to the gallows. So this is not a question of let's debate 2002. This is a question about a person who currently, by the main Supreme Court body, has been exonerated so far. The investigative team that the Supreme Court named, who has no, stock in Modi. I mean, there was no hidden agenda. Let's protect this guy. I mean, if you look at the facts, 104 people have already been arrested for the Gulmarg Society. 32 have been convicted, including Gurnani for the Naroda Hatya. Hundreds have been arrested or in jail. 71 have the death penalty been named for them. So the reality is that justice is moving in India. I'm not one to comment on justice in India. The reality is, here is where we are. Let the courts in India work themselves out. It's not something I like that we have to wait this long, or anyone likes, but this is the reality. As to what your question, I think what we have to see is that Gujarat today is a success story. Overall, if we look at the comparison to the rest of India, Indian states, the positive trends that we see in India, in Gujarat, in terms of GDP, in terms of social indicators, in terms of environmental protection, is primacy to solar, to wind power, to clean air. All of these things are a model for development that I think needs to be thought about. Now, am I sold on every part of that development model? Absolutely not. But there is something that needs to be discussed. What I sense, again, I'm new to Penn. I was at the University of Minnesota until coming here recently. Is that this desire to just force you to believe what I believe and shut up for thinking anything else. I heard today, how dare you think something differently? And to bring up, all types of, that this debate should not even happen. I'm just blown away by that mindset. And I always kind of see why those students might have panicked when they got this petition in the mail. Because maybe this is the mindset of some of the faculty. A rising boat, if you believe, a rising tide will lift all boats. It doesn't always. Some boats have holes in them and they'll drown, and others don't get left because they wouldn't have a chance to be built properly. But if we see the Gujarat story today, every segment of that society has improved. Now, are Muslims still suffering compared to Hindus? Absolutely. Okay? However, compared to the rest of India, they're doing much better. And the reality is that today, in the last election, in the last general election where Narendra Modi was elected, more than one-third of the Muslims in Gujarat voted for Narendra Modi. Now that's better than, Mitt Romney was able to get in the elections here. I don't think that we can make the story that this is a person who hates others, who came out and, hey, I'm going to try to kill these people. This was a story of growth. This is a story of development of all of the things I listed that has come out as far as Modi's economic story. Now, I don't know where I can get into. I have all the data here in terms of GDP, in terms of environment, in terms of per capita growth, the Sarkar Commission reports. I mean, we can go on and on, but I think you've heard enough of this. The reality is that the opportunity to speak was given to a person by Wharton that was denied. And now, I think I'm sort of starting to contextualize how this could actually happen here. So, let me leave it at that.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla. Let's hold the applause until the very end. Next, Professor Loomba.
Yeah, I don't know if you really want us to be talking to each other or to the question that you're asking.
Yeah, please
there's
direct
two different things going on here. And I do want to say that as my investments as a teacher obviously are quite different from Dr. Shukla's. So the idea that we are ramming facts down the throats of these little children who should be really let to play and gather a flower from here and a flower from there and would enjoy their Indian meal isn't why I'm here in this room. I am here to give you facts, and I'm quite welcome the thousands of facts that you brought but somehow can't get across to us. I really do welcome. Let's pit fact against fact. And firstly, let me just say that whether it is on the question of the so-called exoneration, that is an outright lie. The SIT report is here with us. You want to sit here, let's go through what it says. Let's go through what it doesn't say. Anecdotal evidence of Muslims voting for Modi will not fly. I have passed around here the two most substantive facts. And if you have facts, let's hear who's got them and who's talking about that. Public opinion and voting patterns in Gujarat. This is the 2012 Gujarat election study conducted by the Center for the Study of Developing Society. Obviously, the Center for the Study of Developing Society, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, all of these are pointless for these people. It doesn't matter. You can keep repeating the same things as if it is just a bunch of shrill professors. And let me tell you, sir, you can afford to be very dispassionate and calm because you are arguing on the side of somebody who is in power. It's rather too many facts, my head hurts. I'm in the university not to give facts. And these shrill professors who give facts, students, let me tell you at Penn, since you just got here, aren't so scared by facts and nor are they so cowed down. They fight back with me in the classroom and they're quite willing to hold their own. So do not feel too bad about their ability to tell fact from fiction. You should come out with facts. Rest yourself easy. That's not going to be a problem in this room. So let's get some things quite right about, I've circulated two of them here. I am talking about development and I'm also rebutting. Please tell us, you don't talk, okay? If you are going to rebut me, sir, just a minute. We cannot conduct a debate when you tell the speaker to shut up or say something else.
I never said that.
You said something, you said here's the question. Didn't you? Just a minute. And the question, I am not interrupting anybody, sir, don't worry. He started raising how too many facts were going down. And he raised the question of other things than the development. So I asked our eminent conductor, what did he want? Please keep quiet. Yes, I'm in a position of speaking. If you would like a debate here, you will have to keep quiet.
There are lots of loud voices.
Yeah. If you would like to have a debate here, I'm afraid you will have to hold on, marshal your facts, come up with the data, but don't tell me when there's a moderator here what I should be speaking to. We have someone doing it here. fact sheet, but there are many more facts here, and depending on how much time you will give me, I can go into the details. Number one, if Gujarat is such a well-run state, why is it so bad at feeding its people? Contrary to what you've just heard, and again, I'm citing figures from the Indian Planning Commission in conjunction with the United Nations. Now, you don't believe them also, of course. Like Amnesty, like Human Rights Watch, like Center for Development Society. All of these are conspiracies. But Gujarat's rank in the overall hunger index, which equals adult malnutrition, child malnutrition, and child mortality, is 13th among India's 17 major states. Percentage of Gujarati children under 5 years who are underweight, 44.7%, 13th out of India's 17 major states. Percentage increase in Gujarati women with anemia is 9% increase. 36.3% of Gujarati women are underweight, which is above the national average, and the worst figure among India's 6 highest income states. Why has Gujarat's rapid GDP growth produced so little human development? 16th is Gujarat's rank among all major Indian states in improving its literacy from 2000 to 2008. 15 is Gujarat's rank among major Indian states in improving its Human Development Index between 2000 and 2009. Now, the fact is that instead of being opinionated and it being you and versus us, all the major studies conducted by independent agencies, including Professors Jaffer Law and Stephen Wilkinson, have actually correlated this with the violence in Gujarat and what has happened, because if I had time, I would explain how this is broken up so that lower caste people, Muslims, and other people have a differential rate in Gujarat. This is why I asked you for PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, due to the SAC moratorium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Provide. We don't have to do that. Next, I would like to hear from Professor Sarkar.
So, the debate is very, very interesting. I thought I was talking of facts. I thought I was talking of the number of people who died. I thought they were all facts. But never mind that my never mind that my distinguished colleagues couldn't really hear me out. Never mind that they spoke about rhetorics. They distorted exactly what I said. Never mind. I don't take it personally. Never mind that they did not hear me when I said that it was not a mistake. I don't take it personally. But I find it overwhelming that a professor asks a student to shut up. I don't. Maybe some professors do. But right? So let's talk facts. Let's just talk facts. So Mr. Modi has won 3 elections in Gujarat resoundingly free and fair. I haven't heard a single voice. I haven't heard anyone complain about violence in these 3 elections. And his majority was close to 2/3. Can that really happen without an approval of a substantial section of the society, a substantial number of impoverished section of the society? Scientifically, yes. But only if we believe the substantial or very small minority in Gujarat is impoverished. Only if we believe that it's a very small, insignificant fraction is impoverished and they are not voting for Mr. Modi. But then it goes on to say that he is eradicating poverty in Gujarat, which is something very good, which we should be proud of. However, I believe despite all the progress, there is still a non-negligible portion which is below the poverty line, and he himself acknowledges that. And I believe that they are voting for Mr. Modi. And that is why he is getting this resounding mandate. In other words, the fruits for the double-digit growth in Gujarat, double-digit which happened through the last 10 years of recession, when US has slowing down, Europe has been slowing down, the fruits of that growth has reached the masses. I believe that is why he's getting his mandate. Let's talk facts. Let us see the results of the elections in seats which are dominated by religious minorities, who my colleagues believe have been oppressed. In the last local body election, which happened about a month back, there is a town called Salia. 90% of the population there is Muslim, and out of 27 seats in the local body, 24 went to Mr. Modi's party, BJP. Please note facts. 90% Muslim, 24 out of 27 goes to Mr. Modi's party. Now, if that means that the Muslim electorate is not voting for Mr. Modi, then I believe I need to take Mathematics 101. Well, okay. So,
Thank you, Professor.
I'm not done. So
We only a couple minutes to respond to the questions, please.
So I really have to talk about the feeding, the malnutrition.
Well, you have overextended your time again.
Okay, so I hope that I'll get an
You'll have
opportunity to
to
talk
talk
about
about
the malnutrition, and I would like to talk about the facts there.
Okay, Professor Ghose, you can speak lastly to the question about economic growth and Mr. Modi's involvement with that.
Sarkar, actually, I don't know if we need to take Math 101, but one constituency does not actually represent the entire Muslim electorate. 70% and higher in the last election voted against Narendra Modi amongst Muslims. Yes, certainly there are constituencies, Muslim constituencies that vote for Mr. Modi for various reasons. I don't know if you've been to Gujarat lately, but if you have, as a social worker, I'll tell you, there are Muslim constituencies exactly like the village you talked about that are living in daily fear of their lives, specifically because of the 2002 riots. A vote with a Muslim majority community against Narendra Modi now means a targeting, an absolute target drawn on their backs. 2002 has given that mandate to Mr. Modi, ladies and gentlemen. It is the riots that gave him the mandate, not a democratic process. Mr. Modi has been consistently voted against by minority and underrepresented peoples across the state of Gujarat. The scheduled tribe, scheduled caste, as well as Muslim communities have consistently, overwhelmingly voted against him, to the tune of 70 to 80% voting against Mr. Modi's government. That is true. In fact, it has gone from bad to worse. He dropped 5 percentage points amongst Muslims in the last election. Facts are facts. You can take, and you know Math 101 much better than me, man. You can take 1 point and call it your representative of the data. But the line shows an inexorable slope. And the slope is away from Mr. Modi, when that slope is being traversed by minorities in that state. I would also like to say, I would ask a question, a very important question. His development, his GDP growth is no better than anyone else in the top 5 or 6 category. In fact, it's number 5, it's not even in the top. His foreign investment, which he crows on and on about, which this American PR company, through Vibrant Gujarat has engineered for him. In 2005 and 2012, the touted value of foreign investment that was pledged at that conference, engineered by an American firm, was to the tune of 20 trillion rupees. Yet, backup reports by the Planning Commission peg the actual amount that is actually invested to 20% of that, placing Gujarat in foreign investment very high, but definitely not higher than any other state in the country. There are in fact states like Odisha that are way higher. So why then, we should ask this question. It's a mystery, ladies and gentlemen. We should ask this question. Why Modi? Why not someone else? Why Modi with all his horrendous record and his so-so record in some ways and his horrendous development record in other dimensions? Why him? We should ask this question because it is precisely that repression, that fascist, violent repression that allows capital from the US capital from India and the captains of industry from both to be in confluence with a fascist regime like him to establish a form of development that is actually bimodal. Development for upper caste Hindus and rich Hindus. That is off the charts, yes, better than anyone else you can see in India. But brought down on the average, not by anyone, but brought down on the average by the large, around 30% of the population that is not part of that development. That is worse than most people in India. And for that, it needs a squelching of resistance. And that's what you call mandate? Not in the democracy that I operate.
Okay. The next question is going to be, since we have covered a lot of topics relating to the petition and the 2002 incidents, I'm going to ask a question related to the future. The Bharatiya Janata Party is considering nominating Mr. Narendra Modi as their lead candidate for the next Prime Minister of India. What is your response to this, and what do you think of an India possibly led by Mr. Modi in the future? Professor Ghose, I would ask you to go first, to switch the order.
Well, I'm not going to be allowed back in India, I'm sure, if Mr. Modi becomes Prime Minister. So you have my answer on that. I think we are on an extremely, is that the question? His Prime Ministerial candidacy? We are on a very dangerous path. If he is a serious candidate, we must really question what role we have to play in that. We can't really question what's going to happen in India. I fully believe that he will be defeated. I do not believe that the vocal Hindu, right-wing, fascist wing of his party and of this electorate that you keep hearing about is India. I just refuse to believe that. I do not believe he will be Prime Minister. But I do believe we have to firmly and really deeply question our role in it. Wharton, Penn is very much implicated in this process. If we are, after all, being dissuaded from resisting this process and from remaining silent and from giving him a platform as if he is anything but a right-wing nut, then we must question where we have been subsumed into this process. And that is a deep question of conscience. I cannot believe that there is such a majority in the US that starts to, get implicated and subsumed in this process. And you and I are all part of that. We are the elite in this society as well as in India, and we do collaborate with the elite in India. And if we are being collaborated into this process, we are collaborators. So that is a question that we need to really ask ourselves, and ask ourselves our mode of resisting this process. Because it is a question of conscience, it is a question of citizenship for those who are citizens, and it is a question of humanity for those of us who consider ourselves to be part of a kind human race.
Speak a little bit about Mr. Modi's possible candidacy for Prime Minister.
Right. I'm going to address the question here. So, about Mr. Modi's candidacy. So, I'm going to, again, I don't think I will rebut, but if I'm given an opportunity, I could have rebutted distortions inflicted by my distinguished colleague on my speech. But never mind about that. I try and answer exactly the question that has been posed to me. So I really believe Mr. Modi is a modern, progressive politician whose agenda is inclusive and is quite consistent with the secular ethos of India. So let me first make my case. First, it's conveniently forgotten that Mr. Modi has himself risen from the lowest rungs of the society. So Indian democracy and Indian polity is very much dominated by dynastic politics, where unfortunately the prime ministers are born. Well, they do contest elections, but the electorate often doesn't have choice. But Mr. Modi was born in a humble, low-caste family. So it's surprising that some of us believe only upper-caste Hindus vote for them. Last time I checked, Gujarat, or the population of Gujarat, the population of India is largely not upper caste Hindus, they are minorities. So I'm very surprised. But never mind about that. So Mr. Modi he's the first generation politician. So if he does rise to the highest position in India, I believe that would be inspirational for many who would look at the outcome of merit-driven policy. In other words, you can be born in a humble family, you can be born to the owner of a tea shop, but you can, by the dint of your talent, dint of your hard work, you can aspire and you can rise up to the highest position. You do not need to be the son of a prime minister. You do not need to be the third or fourth generation politicians in India where the prime minister's son or the prime minister's daughter is a prime minister. So that, I believe, would be one of the important reasons I would champion Mr. Modi's candidature. However, above and beyond, his agenda is truly pluralistic. So, women's empowerment of women is a significant component of his agenda, and energy, harnessing alternate energy security is a very, very important component of his agenda. I would love to talk in detail about one or two of these. Firstly, because as a woman, women's empowerment is extremely important for me. It's very personal indeed, but it's really important for me. But also as a scientist, I do some research in alternate energy, so I'm very passionate about it. So that's also something I would like to speak about. How much time do I have?
Well, as soon as you could wrap up.
That's a professor talking for you. We just love to talk, all right? But you are the boss, so I'll just respect.
Thank you. So Professor Loomba, do you have any remarks on this?
On whether he'll come to power
Or what your opinion is of him leading the nation, or possibly?
Well, that should be clear by now. So why are we doing that? I will say though, I want to talk about a few things that have happened in the last week actually. It's really interesting because, he's been on this it has seemed that he's unstoppable, okay? And this entire act to clean it up, to make him as a Karam Yogi, talk about the Gujarat success story, and we know that he's hired a major public relations firm in the United States which has been doing this. But it seems that things aren't quite working in the last few days. So even his allies, Nitish Kumar and others have actually come out in public saying that we don't believe he's a responsible leader. So people who are on his side of the camp have actually expressed, and we know there's been a big jockeying going on inside the BJP. So whether the BJP will go ahead and choose him as their prime ministerial candidate remains to be seen, because there have been very serious questions even within the Modi camp. More and more, there have been the public investigation reports that are coming out in the last week have actually been quite astonishing. So yesterday's headlines today they gave the whole sequence of the telegrams that were sent to try and stop the riots, and they're unrefutable. Which is why Modi has moved in, yes, the government has decided to give up the people that they were protecting and have asked for their death penalty. So this has come in response to the Headlines Today report. So I'm not sure that he's going to come to power in quite the way that is imagined. But the most scary part is that the way we have been talking about elections, as if a popularly elected leader means pure representation of everybody, okay? So I think we need to, I don't know what land we live in or what kind of notions of democracy we have, but if sheer voting means that that person is doing right by everyone, then actually if there's students of politics here, they need to actually ask whether then every regime, every popularly elected regime should be very fair and equivalently fair to everybody who voted them in. Which is not true, and at all. But Modi has gone out of his way to say that the lower castes, he talks about Dalits and scavengers, he says they're performing a spiritual duty. And so I don't know all this idea that he's come up from here and there. He's not a Dalit firstly. But even if we were, we've had Maggie Thatcher, who wasn't very good for feminists in Britain. So Modi is hardly going to be, whatever his own caste background, he's taunted Muslims in public, continues to taunt them, and to say, you marry 4 people, every Muslim marries 4, so they will produce 25, and the whole idea that Muslims are multiplying, it's very bad news for secular India. So it depends on which India you want to live in. If you want to live in a Hindu majority India, it's a very good news. But if you are proud of being born in India, where there are at least lip service, and please believe me that this idea of saying, well, the Congress is like this, okay, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Congress party, so you should be a very good campaigner for Modi against the Congress. But if you are addressing those people who are not charmed by the Congress party either, then you have to rethink what Modi stands for and whether we want to have him as our next Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Well, I was born and raised in the United States, so I'm not going to be voting in any election in India. Do I think he'd be a great choice? Well, it depends. As Professor Loomba brought up, there's all kinds of electoral calculations that are going to go into it. I was really hoping that this debate would go beyond just the superficials and the ad hominems. But, these things are difficult. Will Nitish Kumar support him? Will Jayalalitha and the AIDMK support the BJP coalition? Who's going to pull out? Everybody wants to be prime minister. There's going to be a lot of intrigue, and this is parliamentary democracy. We'll all see it happen. If Modi were to become the prime ministerial candidate, and there's a very good chance that will happen, what Wharton did is going to look that much more retrogressive and that much more foolish, because the most prominent opposition party leader in India, of a country of 1 billion, was summarily disinvited from Wharton. It's already playing out. I mean, this is obvious. If Modi were to become prime minister, and if he could do what he did to Gujarat in the last 10 years, not looking beyond what happened in 2002, which everyone agrees is a horrible moment. If that can happen, if, as the Planning Commission has reported, the state went from number 16 in environmental ranking to number 5, if, according to the Planning Commission, it shows that the water ranking has gone up to number 8 in the country, in the clean water in the state, from where it started, which was very low because of the industrial output in that state. It's not number 1, but it went from like 22 to number 8. 2/3 of India's entire nation's solar energy output comes from Gujarat. So that can be replicated. Gujarat, believe this or not, depending on what you just heard, is the safest state in India for women by the Female Security Index created by TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, one of the most preeminent and most respected consultancy services, ranked India number 1 for safety for women, ranked Gujarat number 1. If we look at malnutrition indicators, that has come up a lot. We see that Gujarat started really poorly. Now, what are the reasons for that? I don't know the answers to that. I'm not an anthropologist working on the ground in Gujarat. But I can tell you that the data went from 70.1% of the people being malnourished to 38.7% in 5 years under Modi. That's a good sign. I mean, that's a great trend. Is that number 1 in Gujarat? No. But if those kinds of trends, that kind of dramatic effect, including the highest GDP growth over 10 years. Now, Professor Ghose is right, looking from year to year, Gujarat is ranked in the top 5. But if you look from 2003, I believe, to 2010, no state in India has advanced as much in terms of GDP as Gujarat. And remember, it starts at a higher growth as it is. It had a higher percentage and a higher economic base. So if that could be replicated in Gujarat, I would hope that he would come to power. Because what's in power now, what the alternative is in India, the concurrent Congress party, is a terrible option. If we've seen the number of corruption scandals that have come out, it's been mind-boggling. And none of those have come out. And now there have been some reports here and there of graft in Gujarat as well. No state is completely clean. But in percentage-wise, and if you look in terms of every indicator in the major consultancy services, major news organizations, India Today and others, that have ranked this, they have found India to be, Gujarat to be the cleanest, the number 1 investment destination, the #1 in safety. Boy, if this could be replicated in Gujarat, it would have my vote if I could vote. You know, I think, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance, but I wanted to, since I have a few minutes, to talk about the visa issue, because that's often brought up. Now remember, the visa was denied to Narendra Modi in 2005. And that's when if you remember the Human Rights Watch report that we've heard quoted many times, which was written by Smita Narula, was written right in 2002, in the fall of that year, when all of this is very hot in Gujarat. There was blame flying all over the place. And there were very serious agendas, that this was the opportunity to take the entire mantle of center-right politics in India and to get that death blow in there, to destroy the entire concept that there can be center-right, center-left, and center-right. To believe that the entire right is useless, that it has to be flushed down the toilet. This was utilized by many people as an opportunity. Now, what happened in 2005 is that according to the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 214B, he was denied a diplomatic visa. That issue has then since then been revisited because it was felt that he oversaw a serious religious persecution. Now, was he chief minister? Yes. But since then, it has not been determined that he oversaw this, that he sat in an office and directed people, don't go there, don't help there, kill those people. That's fantasy. It didn't happen that way. It didn't happen. Were people involved? Yes. Did people do horrible things? Yes. And I hope all of them will be brought to justice. However, Modi was not found responsible for that. In the United Kingdom, Japan, the European Union, all of them have lifted their travel restrictions on him. Will the United States do that? Well, you know, let's see what Victoria Nuland of the State Department said. She said he's welcome to apply, and we're going to consider him once again like we would anybody who applies to come to the United States. But she also said this, with regard to our congressional delegation, 4 congressmen just visited Modi in Gujarat since he can't come here. And they said that, she said that the State Department, this Obama administration, believes that visits like this do help support the strengthening of business-to-business ties, of people-to-people ties across India, in Gujarat. So from our perspective, the more congressional delegations that visit India and understand the dynamism and diversity of Gujarat, the more likely we are to continue to deepen those important ties. So the State Department is saying, go visit him, and if he wants to apply, we'll look at him coming here. We're encouraging people to go to Gujarat. But on our own campus, we said, no, we can't even hear from you. Don't even say, I can't even hear your voice. He's that of an untouchable, a pariah. When everybody else, the Obama administration and others are saying, we need to engage. This is the #1 growth story in Gujarat, we need to engage.
Since we are running over time, I'll allow the audience to